The Expendables 4 is the fourth movie in the crazy action and adventure series following Sylvester Stallone and a group of mercenaries that pretty much can't be stopped when they all get together. And the franchise now moves into its fourth movie. It's been quite some time since the last one. Expendables 3 was in 2014, almost 10 years ago. And I thought the franchise was finished. I thought that the trilogy was enough, but here we go with the fourth one, which had been rumored for a while. There were rumors of it, but it's finally arrived. Now, the original concept behind the Expendables is, even though there are movies out there that are similar to this one when it comes to the over-the-top action, this was meant to be, the old movies, sort of tributes to the 80s. They were meant to be big throwbacks with big stars from the 80s, which is why you had Sylvester Stallone in there, which is why you had Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, icons of the 80s coming back to the Expendables. And with Expendables 4, for a time there, it really did feel like this was going to bridge into a new generation, because a lot of this movie really sort of seems to be going in that direction. The Expendables have different members in every movie, but there are some of the original core team that don't make this one. So if you were a fan of guys like Terry Crews and Jet Li, they're not in this movie. The new people from Expendables 3, the younger cast, which is when they first kind of started to do this sort of transition to a new cast, most of them, if not all of them, aren't in this movie. We have a whole bunch of new people now joining up with a handful of old ones. So Dolph Lundgren and Randy Couture are back. Jason Statham is back, this time taking a bit more of a leadership role in comparison to the other movies. But now they're joined by 50 Cent, Megan Fox, Tony Jaa, Iko Uwais, Andy Garcia's in this movie. Levi Tran, who actually wasn't somebody who I even recognized. It's a Vietnamese model and actress. She's in the film. She does what she could. I never really saw her as being, she doesn't really seem to fit. And with this movie, it sort of does kind of go into a bit of what movies like John Wick and Fast and Furious have done, which is just kind of become a straight action movie. This movie's cheese factor is toned down a bit, which some of y'all are going to like, but some of y'all are not going to like, because what made the first three movies awesome was the cheese. So ultimately, this franchise, I think, is in some ways running out of gas. I did like this movie. I'm not going to sit here and say it was a bad movie. I enjoyed it. It was a little over an hour and a half. I didn't hate it at all. I had fun, but it just wasn't anywhere near on the level of the first three, especially the first two. Expendables 2 is almost a perfect movie. Jean-Claude Van Damme is an absolutely phenomenal villain in that movie. In the third movie, you have Mel Gibson taking the role of villain, and he did a great job just being, over-the-top Mel Gibson. In this movie, the villains are a bit weaker than in the other movies. I think that this movie was missing that villainous charisma that kind of made the first three movies work. Even the first movie with Eric Roberts as the somewhat lead villain. He was the lead villain in that one. He was great. Boatloads of charisma. This one, not so much. The other thing about these movies, and I noticed a lot when you watch John Wick, is that while the action sequences are awesome and seeing dudes get sliced up and shot up is cool, by the time you get to near the end of the movie, it starts to sort of get numb. You kind of get numb to it. You're seeing people die in every scene. And it's badass. I'm not saying it's not. And it's entertaining. But the impact of the death is almost desensitized. And you have to remember this is the fourth movie in the series. Now, one thing this movie does explore and continues to explore is the relationship between the two main characters. You've got Barney Ross and you've got Lee Christmas, played by Sylvester Stallone and Jason Statham, respectively. And they sort of have an interesting relationship here that continues from the previous three movies. But in this movie, you do kind of really see how much they care about each other with various scenes in the film. Now, this movie is directed by Scott Wall. Scott Wall, I would say his biggest claim to fame, because he's not really somebody who has done like super, critically acclaimed movies. I mean, he did Act of Valor, he did Need for Speed. He also did Hidden Strike, which came out this year, and that's the movie with John Cena and Jackie Chan that I don't think anybody even knew was being made till it came out. And apparently that movie's been done for like 2 years, so That whole story is weird, man. But he gets brought in to direct and does a pretty good job, I would say. The movie does sort of feel, again, it feels more like a side story in some ways. It doesn't feel anywhere near on the level of the first three films. And that's just the truth. Like, is it a competent action popcorn movie? Yes. Is it a movie you can watch with a date or a movie you can watch with your friends? Sure. Is it a movie you can watch on a Saturday night if you're bored? Absolutely. But it just doesn't compare to the first three because the first three had a bit more charm. This one sort of felt like it was going through the motions. You know, they sort of spiced things up a bit by having Megan Fox join the team. And Megan Fox is a very polarizing actress. She's fine in this. She doesn't do anything that's, you know, on the level of bad like Transformers, you know, 1 and 2. She's fine what she is in this movie. She adds a bit more sex appeal and, you know, there's a whole backstory with her and Lee Christmas. But it doesn't really change that much. She has her moments, but I don't think it changes that much of a dynamic or brings anything that's truly new. Now, I really do love Tony Jaa's character. Tony Jaa is a guy who always brings it in his movies. The dude always brings it, and some are going to sit here and call him the replacement to Jet Li in this one, and I can kind of see why, because he sort of has the Asian martial arts stereotype, but this guy's sort of like a mixture of what Jet Li was, but also with what Lee Christmas does, which is, of course, being very good with knives. They have a bit of a subplot with Dolph Lundgren's character Gunner getting older and having eyesight problems, so his sniping isn't the same. This movie does somewhat address them aging, but it's not the focal point of the story. And I was kind of hoping they would go there. Like, I was really hoping this movie would address that the Expendables are starting to slow down a bit and that maybe they need new blood and all that. This movie did not go there the way I wanted it to, and they had potential to tell a really good story, but it just kind of became generic action fodder, yo. It really did become that, and like I said, you get numb to it. Is this a movie that I think you should go out of your way to go see? Like, is it one that I think you should go see immediately this weekend? Honestly, I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's necessary. If you're a fan of the first three movies and you enjoyed them like I did, you're going to have a good time, but it's just not going to hit you the same as those first three. It's just not. Like you will be disappointed if you put it up to that level. But if you consider it sort of Expendables DLC or Expendables, you know, side story, then maybe it's a bit more realistic. You understand what I'm saying? As far as expectations go, it's more realistic that you'll enjoy it if you have your expectations there. You know, just don't compare it to the previous ones. I don't know how much gas this franchise has left in the tank, honestly. Part of me kind of thinks that this should kind of be it. Part of me thinks that 3 should have been it and this one should have never been made. Like I said, I had fun, but it's just not one where when I go look at my Blu-ray or 4K collection in a couple years and I see Expendables 1, 2, and 3 and then Expendables 4 there, I'm not going to rush to see it. It's going to be one of those movies where I want to watch like a marathon 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, that's different. But 4 by itself, it just doesn't work. And it just wasn't that great. But I had fun. So it's not a bad movie. And honestly, man, part of me thinks that this type of movie right here, I feel like John Wick has kind of overcame it a bit. There's more martial arts in the John Wick movie, so it's not a one-on-one comparison, but John Wick is very over the top, probably more than this movie was. But when you think about the Expendables franchise being a tribute to 80s film, this one has it there a little bit, but nowhere near the level of the first three. So those are my thoughts on the Expendables 4. Let me know what you think down below, and we'll talk real soon.